Herzlich willkommen. Welcome to our presentation from Maro, from Salome Benidze. Also wir präsentieren Maro von Salome Benidze. Und zuerst möchte ich Salome Benidze vorstellen. Sie ist 1986 in Kutaisi in Georgien geboren, studierte Journalismus, Politikwissenschaften und Public Relations in Tbilisi, Vilnius und Thessaloniki. Sie ist Schriftstellerin, Übersetzerin und engagiert sich für Frauenrechte. Ihre Erzählungen, oder es ist wie ein Roman, Die Stadt auf dem Wasser, über 7 Frauen, und das Wasser wurde 2015 veröffentlicht und wurde ein Bestseller in Georgien, und wir haben es 2017 auf Deutsch mit Illustrationen von Tatjana Dareischvili veröffentlicht und übersetzt. So, Salome Benidze was born in 1986 in Kutaisi, studied journalism, political sciences and public relations in Tbilisi, Vilnius and Thessaloniki. She's a writer and translator, for example, of Salman Rushdie, and is committed to women's rights. She lives in Tbilisi and in Istanbul for the moment. And her short story collection, The City on the Water, about 7 women and the water, was published in 2015 and became a bestseller in Georgia. And we published it in 2017 in German with illustrations by Tatjana Dareischvili. Ein Fotobuch von Salome Benidze in Zusammenarbeit mit Dina Oganova über Frauen und ihr Leben nach dem Kaukasuskrieg von 2008 mit Porträts, sowohl schriftliche als auch Fotoporträts über Frauen zwischen 19 und 87 Jahren und mit mehr als 200 Fotos, wurde in Georgien 2018 veröffentlicht und 2020 auf Deutsch mit dem Titel Nicht mal die Vögel fliegen mehr dort, Porträts von Frauen in Georgien. Her photo book by Salome Benidze and the photographer Dina Oganova about women and their lives 10 years after the Russian-Georgian War, with portraits of women between 19 and 87 and with more than 200 photos, was published in Georgia in 2018 and 2020 in German. So in Georgia it has the title She Rose, and in German Nicht mal die Vögel fliegen mehr dort. As the 2 other books, Maro was also translated by Yunona Guruli, and it is marvelously illustrated by Tatjana Dareischvili. Also wie die beiden anderen Bücher ist auch Maro übersetzt von Yunona Guruli und wundervoll illustriert von Tatjana Dareischvili. Wir werden gleich weitere Bilder sehen. So, but now to you, tell us, who is Maro and how do we know about her?
Thank you, Britta. Is this working? Okay, I think now if I get closer, it does. Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you very much for being such a good friend for Georgia, not only for me, because we are now, as many of you might know, are facing quite difficult situation as a country, as a society, and right now it's very, very important for us to be presented at platforms like Frankfurt Book Fair, and to have our texts translated and presented at different European platforms as well. So, you need to translate, sure.
Yeah.
Yes, sorry.
So, also sie sie dankt oder findet es natürlich sehr, sehr wichtig, hier zu sein. Und gerade in dieser sehr, sehr schwierigen Zeit in Georgien im Moment ist es umso wichtiger, hier auf der Frankfurter Buchmesse präsent zu sein und auch gerade dieses Buch, also die Bücher, aber auch vor allem dieses Buch hier vorzustellen.
So, and I want to also express my deepest gratitude to my Georgian publisher, Intellecti Publishing, Zviad is here. Thank you so much for all your support, and to everyone who made it possible that we are here, Georgian writers are here at the Frankfurt Book Fair. About Maro, it's a very long story, which is a twin story of Georgia's first democratic republic, which dates back to 1918. So Maro's life to me has always been a history of Georgia's first democracy in a way. Maro,
ja. Also nach dem herzlichen Dank auch an all diejenigen, die das Buch möglich gemacht haben und vor allem an den Verleger, also Intellecti Publishing in Georgien. Ist es, meint sie, dass es natürlich gerade die Zeit, um die es geht jetzt bei Maro, ist eine, die für sie und für Georgien sehr wichtig ist, die der ersten Republik Georgiens. Wir sind jetzt 1918.
Maro was a student of Tbilisi State University, and she was a volunteer nurse of the Red Cross in Georgia when Red Army started invasion of Tbilisi. She signed up as a volunteer nurse, and in a couple of days after being deployed to the front line, she died as a hero on the battlefield. So she is our first female national hero.
Ja, wahrscheinlich ist es völlig überflüssig, dass ich übersetze, aber ja, ist es überflüssig, dann nicken Sie und dann machen wir das auf Englisch weiter. Sehr gut. Vielen Dank. Wenn es jetzt keine Proteste mehr gibt, dann danke. You can continue in English.
Okay, perfect. Okay, better. So, how we know about Maro? She left her diary where she...
Nächstes Foto bitte. Excuse me, nächstes Foto bitte.
Yeah. So, she left her diary where she describes her life for around 3 years, if I'm not mistaken. And with describing her life, she also describes the life of Georgia's first republic. Because she came from a very famous family of writers, public figures. Her grandmother was one of the first Georgian feminists and educators and writers. Her father was also a famous poet, so she grew up very close to everyone who made it possible to establish Georgia's first republic and democracy. So she was like a first-hand observer of everything, every political developments, cultural developments that were going on. Within her story of a teenage girl, of a regular teenage girl, I would say, full of excitements, full of expectations, small love stories, and so on and so forth. In between all this, she gives us a wonderful picture how was the life in Georgia's first republic. And also, it is very important to say that her ideas are very progressive, very feminist, very pro-European. So she was dreaming about studying in Europe, going to Paris, going to Italy, having her own vineyard. So it's just these notebooks of hers are full of hopes and dreams. And unfortunately, they did not come true. They were buried together with our first independence. So for many years, as many of you might know, we were part of the Soviet Union for 70 years. So everything that was Georgian, that was truly part of our identity was hidden for so many years. And Soviets were trying erase all the memories, all the signs that would remind us who we are. Maro's diary was lost disappeared for many years, and then it came back to life with help of many people, but also with huge role of Georgia's Museum of Literature, and by the end of 80s, when the movement for freedom and democracy became stronger, which also resulted to our second independence and second republic afterwards, Maro's name was reborn among those people who were fighting for Georgia's freedom and democracy.
Nächstes Foto bitte. Einfach.
For me, I learned about her as a child, then I read her diary, and this is her family on the illustration, her famous grandmother who is sitting in the center with her grandchildren. Maro is the one standing at the corner with her diary in a blue dress. So she came to my mind and to my life when I was a child, and of course I was very, very impressed by her story. 19 years old girl who holds the idea of her country's independence very dear, very close to her heart, and I believe, based on what I have read about her and based on her diary as well, she never would want to be a hero. It was just, but she also knew that she would never be able to be happy and to be free in the country which was occupied. So this was the idea that drove her to be a volunteer as a nurse and to try to defend the independence of her country. So, of course, this was very impressive for me as a teenage girl, but I would never imagine by then I would write something about her, because this is like, for Georgians, there are topics that are too sacred, I would say, too dear. So it's like, for us, it's always very difficult to touch those topics and to give our own version of those topics to the society. This happened to my life that I wrote about her. And maybe we can move to the story how this happened, or
how this happened that you wrote about her, please tell us, and then afterwards I will just read a very short paragraph in German, just to hear how it worked.
So I'm very happy to see Lasha Bugadze, our very, very famous writer, in the audience, because it actually happened through him how I wrote this book, because he was contacted by the Delft Chamber Music Festival, which is a wonderful event and which has a Georgian artistic director, Nino Guetadze, brilliant pianist. So, and Nino had this idea of bringing Maro's story to the audience of Delft Chamber Music Festival, and they wanted someone who would write the libretto for this, and through the dialogue of Lasha and another brilliant feminist author, Tamtam Melashvili, so this idea came to me, and I was asked if I wanted to write this libretto. And I immediately said yes, and then I realized that I was not so sure if I could do it or not. And then there was this very long way for me to find my own way to Maro and her story, because there are these stories that we all know, but when you write your version of the story, you really need something to catch, even something small that will give you your own thread of the whole history. So And also that was the period when the full-scale war started in Ukraine, and that really made me think a lot about our situation as well, and all the pains and traumas from the wars of Abkhazia, from the war of 2008 came back to me. And I remember myself sitting at the hotel room in Istanbul trying to check on my friends in Kiev on one hand, and also to try to draft the first pages of Maro. But I mean, to be honest, I was struggling. And then it was a bit strange because I have a very close friend. We've been friends for 20 years maybe. And then we went to a birthday of our friend, and we were sitting outside in a very famous venue in Tbilisi. And I was complaining with two of my friends that, okay, I really need to start actual writing now instead of making notes and, wandering around the documents. But I don't know how should I do it. And this very close friend of mine told me, oh, have I ever told you that my great-grandmother was Maro's cousin? And she told me the story how Maro went to the Red Cross office to sign up as a nurse, and how she came back and passed through the house of his uncle, and how she said farewells to her cousin. And that was a real, like when you see clearly how your story will look like and what is your starting point and how this historic character, because when we talk about national heroes, they really seem very, very far away from us. And this story gave me the idea how I could bring Maro closer to me. I'm very happy one of my friends who was part of this dialogue, and actually in this book, like when I then decided to rewrite this libretto and do a book, I put this whole narration in the dialogue of 3 young women in modern Georgia. And this is an actual dialogue, of course, like extended, but this is an actual dialogue we had. And I'm really glad that one of my friends who was part of this dialogue is here today. And I'm really grateful for this dialogue and for having this opportunity to have my own story of Maro. And then this libretto was staged in Delft in 2020. And it was really, the performance was really praised in Dutch media. It was compared, they compared this story to Anne Frank's story. And actually, there might be a lot of differences, but there might be a lot of similarities as well. But I think the most importantly, it's both of them are about fighting with injustice, fighting with evil systems, and unfortunately these kind of stories and narratives never go out of fashion, because even today we're facing similar situations in many places.
Und ein kleines Stück aus diesem Dialog. We have only 7 minutes left, I think, but just a very short part of this dialogue. Ein kleiner Teil ist eben zwischen Freundinnen heute, jungen Frauen von heute und der Maro von vor 100 Jahren. Und nur einen Teil davon von Maro auf Deutsch. Großmutter lehrte mich durch ihr Leben, wie ich für mich und für andere kämpfen soll. Sie lehrte mich, dass Frauen einander zur Seite stehen müssen, dass das, was wir tun und wünschen, wichtig ist, dass wir uns nicht fürchten und keinen Rückzieher machen dürfen. Und die Maro von damals und die Nina von heute finden darin sehr viele Parallelen, und Nina meint dann, ja, auch ich bin Feministin. Nur das als ganz kleinen Ausschnitt. Und nächstes Foto nochmal, bitte. So, vielleicht, you spoke already about the importance for the Georgian Republic.
First
so
Republic.
Only
so just very briefly, these are 5 women who were members of Georgia's first parliament. They were elected in 1919, so when in many countries across the world, women could not even vote, in Georgia we had 5 women elected. So like when we speak about the idea where Georgia belongs, whether it belongs to Europe, whether it belongs to somewhere else, how should we identify ourselves? Like, to me, Europe is not, of course, just a geography. It's an idea, and I think that this story of Georgia's first republic and how equal it was, how diverse it was, with 5 women in the parliament, with the first Muslim woman ever elected in a legislative body in the world. So this tells a lot about what kind of republic we had, what were our aspirations, and what kind of people Georgians are. So this is the answer.
And maybe the last picture, oder nochmal ein Foto, noch ganz kurz.
Yeah. This is my favorite illustration in this book. This is how Maro is telling her farewells to her cousin. And yeah, this is where I started writing the book.
And das nächste? And the next one, because I only understood when you told me now what's about the story of this building in connection to Maro.
Yeah, actually this is our parliament building in Tbilisi, and before there was a Russian military church which was built during the Russian Empire, and of course it had its own cemetery. So all these young people who died defending Tbilisi in 1921 are actually buried under this building, including Maro. So we don't have her grave, like actual grave, but we know she's buried here. And I always say that there is no contemporary history, no history of contemporary Georgia without this building and this area, because everything happens either in this building or in front of this building. So all the major protests are happening in front of this building, even nowadays. And that's why I wanted to include this in the book and bring the modern perspective of many things, including maybe nowadays protests that were not there when I wrote this libretto, but this remains very relevant.
And maybe to finish, we can make the connection to our reception we will have at the stand, AvivA stand.
Yes.
In A141, because we have even a special, not only a very special guest and other special guests, but also a special wine.
Yeah, the wine is also named after Maro and done by a brilliant female winemaker and writer, Benidze. So thank you very much, Britta, for bringing this to the book presentation. And maybe one last thing I want to say here is I really won't be true to myself and to my country and to my friends if I don't use this space to express my deepest solidarity to brilliant Georgian poet and writer Zviad Ratiani, who is in prison now, to journalist Mzia Marlobeli, who is also in prison, and to everyone who is fighting for Georgia's freedom and independence. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Salome.